Hi, everyone, and welcome back. It's Dana Marie, and I am here with Michelle.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, hello. And we're just building off of last episode. In last episode, go back and listen if you haven't yet. But in last episode, we talked about some of our tips for heading back to school. And we gave you sort of our top 3 things that we encourage parents and caregivers to do at the beginning of a school year and as their kiddos head back to school. And then at the end of the episode, we mentioned our office hours and how that can support parents getting back to school. And then we realized that a lot of parents and caregivers don't know what that means, what office hours mean,
Yep.
what we can talk about during office hours. So we're going to do this sort of additional episode today just to quickly talk about what happens when you sign up for an office hours appointment with us and what are some of the topics that we can discuss. I think it's honestly probably we've been doing office hours and sort of pay what you can sessions for now years. And these are one-off sessions that folks can just sign up, come and meet with us for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes sometimes, and kind of just troubleshoot an issue or a couple of issues that they're having with the special education process. These typically are people who either don't want to or aren't in a position to hire an advocate full time, right? Somebody to work with them full time for an entire school year, but might have a couple of questions that they really just need an expert or multiple experts to weigh in on. Sometimes folks who come to us for office hours end up becoming clients, end up working with us for a little bit longer, which we love. But these are really, truly just opportunities for people to get some questions answered and to get some information about whatever the topic is that they're struggling with at this present moment in special education or with the special education process. With all of that, today we're going to give you some of people have quite literally come to us with everything, you name it. I think we've had it during one of these sessions, but we're going to give you sort of the 5 that we feel like we see the most or that we see the most consistently when people come to us for these one-off conversations, these one-off calls. And might seem super obvious right off the bat, but the number 1 is specific IEP questions. Often parents will have the full IEP in front of them, will understand most of it or will understand some of it. And then there are just a couple of things that they're like, I either don't know what this means or I'm not sure that what they're proposing is actually appropriate for my child. So to
Yeah.
dig down even a little bit deeper, oftentimes what we're looking at in these conversations are specific goals and objectives to see if they're appropriate for the kiddo. Sometimes we're looking at services, what's included, maybe what's not included. Oftentimes we're having a conversation about accommodations, what accommodations might be supportive for the student that might not be included in the IEP or looking what's already in there. So believe it or not, in 45 minutes, we can do all of that. We can take a look at an IEP with you. We can take a look at specific goals with you, accommodations, services, transition plans, and we can have a conversation and help you figure out what's working maybe in the IEP and what's not working, and then letting you go or leaving you with some tangible things that you can ask for from the school team when you reconvene the team or when the next annual review is, reeval, so on and so forth. So I would say in general, that's one of the bigger ones, right? People bring draft IEPs to us before they sign them or before they accept them, and they want to just get some feedback about what's in there, what's working, or maybe what needs to be changed or fixed.
Yeah. And likewise, the other big kind of overarching topic that folks come to us with is about placement and whether the current placement is appropriate for their child or wondering how to have their child move back to inclusion, or maybe a out of district or sub-separate placement was proposed at the last meeting, but the right placement hasn't been found yet. Calls last spring that I remember pretty vividly was about what kind of questions they should be asking the current team and next year's team about the placement, moving from more of a partial inclusion into a sub-separate classroom. And they just wanted to make sure that in addition to the social emotional needs of their child, that academic needs would also be met. So we were able to come up with them a list of some pretty beefy questions to ask the current teachers and next year's teachers, specifically in terms of how they handled academics, so that we can make sure that this child was not just getting the supports they needed social, emotionally, and behaviorally, but
Mhm.
also so that they didn't fall back on grade level curriculum, which is where they should be accessing. Placement questions aren't just necessarily about, is this the right placement for my child? Or I think my child needs something more restrictive or less restrictive. It could be something like that. Like, how are you going to have conversations with team members, right? I thought that was a really good call last spring.
Yeah, and now you're reminding me of another one that we had even more recently where the school district actually proposed an out of district placement for the kiddo and then started sending packets to a whole slew of schools. And the parent reached out so overwhelmed and was like, yes, I think my child needs a different placement. I'm really happy that this is what the school is proposing, but I don't know anything about these 15
Mm-hmm.
schools or how to get information about them or what the next steps are. So, also walking parents and families through the process. If a different placement is recommended for their child, like how to get information. We've done this for a long time now. We know a lot of the placements in Massachusetts in particular. And so we are able to have conversations with people about specific schools too, if that comes up. The other thing, which is a much broader conversation, but one that we get a lot, is around evaluations. Parents will often come to us because their child is being evaluated for special education, right, to determine eligibility. So they might come to try to make sense of evaluations. We can't necessarily in 45 minutes make sense of an entire package of evaluations. If your child was evaluated with like a cognitive assessment, maybe a speech assessment, occupational therapy, physical therapy, behavior, so on and so forth, in 45 minutes, we can't necessarily sift through all of those with you, but we can talk more broadly about your specific questions as they relate to the evaluation. So what parents will do is they'll go through the evals on their own first and then come to us with kind of a list of questions like, what does this mean? What is this specific paragraph saying? What do these numbers mean, right? It says my child is in this percentile and their standard score is this. What does that actually mean in real life? So bringing some of those specific evaluation questions, and then under the umbrella of evaluation, a lot of parents will come to us because they're not happy with the evaluations that have been completed by the school district, and they're wanting to find out sort of what recourse they have to either get independent evaluations done, how to find independent evaluators, how to pay for it, what does that look like, so on and so forth. So the evaluation umbrella is definitely large. It's a large umbrella. But parents will come to us with specific questions they have either about an eval that was done for their child or about how to navigate the process of getting different evaluations done for their kiddo as they go through either the eligibility process or a reevaluation, right? They might already be on an IEP, but they're getting updated testing, and we can support that as well.
Yeah, another question that came up at least twice over the past couple of years was around the topic of compensatory services and what that looks like and how to get those for their child. And I think we'll probably just do a different episode about what compensatory services
Yeah.
are. But
Conversation.
that being, so when a child is not receiving or has not been receiving a service as outlined in their IEP, the team should meet to discuss what service they're not receiving, why they're not receiving that service. Maybe there isn't a therapist available, right? That's the most common one. Somebody's on maternity leave or has left the district. They haven't been able to replace somebody, whatever reason it is, and discussing if they have lost any skills during that period of time that they were not receiving that service, and then discussing how many sessions it would take to make up or recoup those services. So it's not always necessarily a one-to-one sort of situation like my child missed 5 sessions of OT. Now the school district owes my child 5 sessions of OT. It's more of a more nuanced, complex kind of conversation that happens with the IEP team. But like I said, we'll do an other discussion about that. But that's an example of a question that has come up a few times. Parents wondering, my child hasn't been receiving a particular service. What are next steps? How can I make sure my child is getting the services that they are legally owed? So that's a very specific conversation or question. And that kind of leads us into overall, one of the biggest ways that we're able to support parents is with how to communicate with the team in an effective way. Writing letters, how to write if they're partially rejecting or rejecting an IEP or placement, helping parents write or giving them language or supporting them with some language with how to answer questions or how to make special requests of the team or the school. So those sorts of questions oftentimes come up, and that's how we support parents in a less traditional advocate sort of
Mhm.
way, are able to help parents then advocate for their child themselves with us kind of in the background.
We can honestly, you can like see the weight like lifted off of a parent when you're like, we could help you write this email. Sometimes that's what
Mhm.
is a sticking point for people, right? Like, I don't even know what to ask for, and I don't even know how to ask for it, right? So, whether it's people come to
Yep.
us because they've not responded yet to an IEP because they don't think they want to accept it, but they don't know what to do with that. Or because the school has sent an email and they're like, I don't even know what to say to this. What do they want me to say to this? So that's a big one. It's just helping support the communication and open the lines of communication. We talked about this
Mhm.
on last episode. We talk about it kind of a lot, honestly, here about how to build those relationships with the school team. It's hard. No one's saying it's easy. When your
Mhm.
child receives the support of special education. And when you're working with a lot of people, teachers and specialists and service providers and ETLs and so on and so forth, that is incredibly challenging to manage all of those like relationships and manage all those personalities. And so we like to support parents with that because we feel like it's a very tangible way they can see some of that like weight lifted. Even just drafting an email, it might seem easy to us to draft that email, and it might be something that's a sticking point, like I said, for a parent or caregiver who's trying to like get their kiddo something they need.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. So those are some of the overarching themes or even some more specific examples of what parents have come to us during office hour sessions for support with. And I think it might be helpful to kind of talk about what the structure of a session looks like. They're 45 minutes, which means we can do a lot, but it has to be very focused and honed in on one, maybe two very specific questions that you have. So, what's most important for you as the parent to maximize your time with us is to have that one or two big questions that we can tackle that are very specific. So, we can focus in, give the attention to those one or two things. So, you get clarity and direction on that. And then potentially talk about if there's more that we need to dig into from that conversation, then it might be maybe you need one more office hour with us, or maybe working with us in a longer term, having us support you with a record review or with some extra behind the scenes sort of face to face sessions. But really having that one or two very specific questions or focus areas, as opposed, we're not going to be able to cover three, four, five, six things. We're not going to be able to go through evaluations in detail during the session. So it's not to say that we can't get started during one of these office hour sessions, but that would require more time and a different type of service that we can absolutely discuss during an office hour.
Yeah, and we try to make it as easy as possible. So you'll see in the show notes, we'll link our calendar for these specific office hours. You'll see which dates are still available and which times are only on each date. I think there are only a few times still available, but you can see. And then we'll ask you a series of questions just to prepare for that conversation. And one of the questions we'll ask you is to just give us kind of a little bit of a sense of what you want to talk about so that we can come into the conversation prepared too, like Michelle said, to really maximize our time together. So it's super simple. You literally just click on this link, you pick the day and the time that works for you, fill out a couple of questions, and then it sends us all of your information. It will send you a Zoom link to join us on Zoom, and then we will meet you on that day and time for our office hours conversation. We also love that this gives us a chance. We have some clients we've been working with for 4 or 5 years now, but this really gives us a chance to meet new people, to meet new parents and caregivers, to learn about new kiddos, and to try to help support a wider variety of
Mhm.
people and a larger group of people in these one-off sessions. So we really do encourage you to take advantage. $45 for 45 minutes is deeply discounted from our typical price too for these back to school office hours. So we do encourage you to take advantage if it's something that you've been thinking about. And with that, we gave you 5 things that you can talk to us about, but really the list is limitless and the list could be anything that you're struggling with,
Mhm.
special education process. So be creative, whatever you need some support with, just let us know. Fill out that quick form, those quick questions when you schedule your time. And then we look forward to chatting with you during these calls and getting to know you and your child a little bit more.